Looks like I've just lost my microphone there. Apologies for that. Can people hear me now? Everyone hear that?
That's fine. I think we all did actually. I think it happened when the recording started, Simon, so don't worry.
Okay, yeah. So big welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us for this session this morning. We're delighted to be with you today. Myself and my colleague Ali are going to be your main hosts for this morning. So just a little bit about myself. I started this kind of co-production sort of passion, if you like. Many years ago, I was a personal assistant stroke carer, if you prefer, for a person in my gap year before university who was quite active in the independent living movement. And I learned an enormous amount about the importance of people having choice control over the way the support that they need to live the life they want is organised. And I went on later to work with him to set up a user-led personal assistance agency, which is still going strong, I'm pleased to say, after about 25 years. And more recently, I have a son with mental health issues, and my father, who died just about 18 months ago with dementia, had a personal budget for the last period of his life. So lots of recent experience as well about trying to wrestle with the social care system to make sure that we could get it to fit what was important to us. So that's me. I'll just hand over to Ali for a minute to let her introduce herself as well.
Hi, yeah, it's lovely to be here. I'm Ali. I used to be a nurse, but I've been a parent carer. Some people like that terminology, some don't, but I'm using it for the time being. For the past 26 years for my two children, who both have a chronic life-limiting condition and one of whom has a severe mental health condition. So I've spent many years trying to get the right care and support services for them. At times it's been a bit of a battle, and through those experiences have really wanted to make sure that my voice has been heard and that what's important to me and my family has been at the forefront, and also making sure that that happens for other people as well. So I've ended up doing the peer leadership development programme, which is run by NHS England. So I'm now an NHS peer leader and I sit on their national strategic co-production group, and I've been working with Simon for the past 4 years, I think it is now, Simon, helping to run Working Together for Change co-production workshops, which is just brilliant because it's using my own experiences and making sure that what is important to people gets heard and is at the forefront of shaping services and strategies. So it's brilliant to be here today with you all. Thank you for turning up.
Thanks, Ali. So today we've got a mixture of different ways of interacting. Obviously, there's the chat that you can always use. We're going to have a Menti poll shortly, and we'll also be using a whiteboard on Miro, and there's a link if you want to have a quick preview of that in the chat, but we'll get to that in due course. So as we're going through the different modes of interaction, if you're struggling at any time, then please just let us know, probably by the chat or giving us a wave, and we'll do what we can to sort out what's possible to sort out so that everyone can interact with the session as we're going along. So I do have some slides to kind of start with, so I'm gonna just kick off with those. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yep, they're on there. That's great. Yeah, they're in presenting.
Is that all right?
That's brilliant. Yeah.
Brilliant. So this is our headline kind of thing that we're trying to do is to get to grips with co-production collectively to improve our confidence as we go through this morning and play with different things that are important to help co-production go really well. When we're thinking about co-production, it's also helpful to think about what is it that we're trying to co-produce. So the tagline that you can see in the top right hand part of the screen there is the vision behind Social Care Future, which are a very influential network. We work as associates with Social Care Future with a number of local authorities who are all struggling to build a new social care future based on this vision. So in case you can't read it, I'll read it out to you. So we all want to live in the place we call home, with the people and things that we love, in communities where we look out for one another, doing things that matter to us. That's the social care future we seek. So when we're talking about co-production within social care, we have this very clear, strong purpose, strong vision statement that helps us kind of orientate around what it is that we're trying to achieve. Now, if you're not working in social care, I'm not sure if some of you may be on the margins of that, you may have something slightly different to that. But this is an example for those of you for whom that might be the case of what a good, inclusive, clear vision might look like. And it's one within the social care community that has a great deal of traction. So it's been adopted by many local authorities. Social Care Future has, I think, about 35 local authorities who are allied themselves to this vision, but it also has very strong traction with key influential and decision-making bodies like the Care Quality Commission and the Department of Health, and importantly ADAS, whose publication last year, Time to Act, again adopts this vision for how the community, that's the directors of adult social services across England, want to see social care develop. So I thought that might be helpful. As you've heard, these are the people who are going to be guiding us through the day. Myself and Ali, your main hosts. We've got Shani helping us in the background, and Kirsty and Thomas, who are going to give us a lived experience perspective later on during this morning. And if you want to, in the chat, you can let us know which of these ducks best represents your mood this morning, if that works for you. And for some people it might, and for some people it might not. If it doesn't work for you and you prefer biscuits, or you'd like to let us know just randomly what your favorite biscuit is, then you can do that as well. These are two icebreaker exercises that we often use to just equalize the space, to remind ourselves that in the case of the ducks, that some of us might be feeling a bit off. We might have had a bad day. There might be something going on with your kids, with your caring responsibilities, with whatever it is at home or work life. That means that you're not coming to the day 100%, and that's fine. We're just acknowledging that everyone comes in all different shapes and flavors and forms, and whatever you're feeling like, it's an inclusive space to help each other feel okay about that and work together in a constructive way. And the biscuits is again another way of kind of just acknowledging that however important we think we all are or not, we all like biscuits with our tea or coffee, or most of us do, and it's a way of just kind of saying, you know what, we're not all that different, and let's just be human all together. And that's important for hosting a good co-production space, to do some of that kind of equalizing, if you like, to make everyone feel welcome, and to make everyone feel that we're not trying to do anything kind of too technical, and that you can just be yourself. So here's our ways of working for this morning, which expanding on that a little bit. So please look after your own comfort. Do ask for help if you need anything. This is a shared and equal and safe space. We're all learning, including us. Every time we do one of these sessions, we learn something as well from preparing it and from the conversations that we have with you in the event itself. Use whatever means is helpful for you to engage, and chat and hand raises is fine. Keep your camera on if you can, so that's really helpful, just so that we can see people in the room. Feels quite anonymous sometimes, doesn't it, when you're doing these online meetings? As I'm presenting to you, I can't see all the faces, I can only see one, so it does feel a little bit weird. You get used to it, but anything we can do to kind of make that less anonymous, and cameras is one of those things that really helps. So camera on if you can. And also keep your mic muted so that we can avoid any background noise, particularly as we're recording. That's really helpful. Do expect some mistakes. Again, we're all human. These things happen. So actually, sometimes it's more helpful than not if they do, because it just takes the edge off trying to be perfect, which none of us are, even though we might try. So that's fine. If something happens, we'll just roll with it. make the best of and fix what we can. And no silly questions. So if there's something that you're not sure about, please do pipe up and ask. And as I said, we'll do what we can to help. So just going back to the social care future to help us kind of orientate again a little bit. So for the social care future's work is based on these 5 key changes that they're aiming to support and enable the community to build. And the community is people with lived experience, voluntary sector organisations and local authorities who are all members of Social Care Future Network. And if you're interested, you can join their network if you want as well. So communities where everyone belongs, living in the place we call home, living the lives we want to live, more resources better used, and sharing power as equals. So those are 5 kind of strands of work that are folding out of the co-productive approach that they have to building that vision from their community. This is our agenda for today. So this is our best guess really as to how we're going to try and spend our time according to these guidelines. If we need to flex a bit, that's fine, and we'll do our best to kind of keep to time and get through all the things that we need to come out the other end, finishing at 1:30, feeling like we've done something useful and are not falling over from exhaustion. So this is our check-in and welcome. We're going to do a Menti poll in a second, and then we're going to get into some principles for approaching co-production. Some of the things that you can think about that will really help you build your confidence as you're thinking about how you might engage in co-production for the work that is important to you and the opportunities that you've got to do that. Then we're going to get stuck in with some material to do some practice, looking at some information that has been collected for a past co-production process and seeing if we can work together to understand the patterns of that, doing some theming. So that's a practical tool that you can use, which is very powerful and works very well as a way of building a shared understanding and thinking about what priorities might be from the different people who you're engaging with in co-production by listening to them and understanding what the patterns are that people are saying. So we're going to have a play with that. And then we're going to talk about a little bit about kind of language in relation to co-production, how that can be quite sticky and how to traverse that difficult terrain. And more kind of folding out of that, we're going to say a little bit about how sometimes when the dynamics might get a little bit difficult when you're dealing with a group of people, some of whom might have had bad experiences of co-production in the past or engagement in the past, what sort of things can you do that might be helpful to keep you in a good place and able to deal with that well. Come for a break around 11:30. Some more on some key principles for approaching co-production, leading us into another practical exercise, a nice playful one, looking at in more detail about how to prioritize different ideas for what you things that you might do to sort through in a way that you can manage people's expectations constructively. And then we've got a short video from some work that's been going on within the SEND partnership in Hertfordshire about how they've been using, as you might have heard Ali mention, a co-production process that we do a lot of called Working Together for Change, which Hertfordshire has used quite extensively, and about 9 other authorities in the region are also using it as well. And then we got the most important bit, which is fingers crossed we're going to hear from Kirsty and Thomas taking us into lunch about what makes a good co-production experience for them. We got a bit of a working lunch, so we're going to give you half an hour for lunch, but we've got something again quite playful for you to kind of have a look at and reflect on whilst you're eating a bagel or whatever it is that you're going to have. And then before we finish in the last half an hour, we're going to do some work to create a checklist for you to think about how you're going to use the learning from today moving forward, and some of that we're going to compile into a tool that we can share back with you after today. That will take us into final thoughts and feedback, finishing at 1:30. So that's our plan. It's quite an ambitious plan, so that does mean that we will at times need to jolly ourselves along to get through it all, and sometimes we might need to kind of shorten things a little bit to make up time. So please forgive us in advance for that, but just to let you know. As Shane said, this is what we're hoping that you'll get out from today. So a little bit about understanding the difference between co-production and other types of engagement, improving your confidence, having some practical tools to use, understanding what to do when things get difficult, understanding your own strengths and weaknesses when you're facilitating co-production spaces, and identifying opportunities that you can get involved with that are pertinent to you over the next kind of 3 to 6 months. So we're going to do a little Menti poll. The easiest way to do this, if you can, is to point your phone at it, if you've got a camera phone, at that QR code, and that will take you to the Menti poll itself. If you can't do that, you can copy the tag there and type that into your browser, and that will take you directly to the Menti poll as well. So I'm just as I do that, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and then pull up the Menti poll. So bear with me while I do that.
If it's not working, please do feel free to pop things in the chat if you'd like to. That's perfectly fine too. It's not as anonymous then, so if you're feeling brave, you can do that.
So fairly straightforwardly, the question is, ignore the first, second, third, fourth. There's no you don't need to come first or second or third or fourth.
Could you just put the QR code back up quickly again, Simon? Just say,
yeah,
is that possible?
To toggle back to do that, but bear with me. Yep. How's that?
Brilliant.
Just see if I can put it in the chat.
In the chat, yeah. You can do that. Would be great as well.
Okay, bear with me then. This will be the bit when you're expecting some mistakes, because this might go wrong.
Well, it sounds very impressive, so well done. Apparently the hyperlink in the chat doesn't copy and paste.
Put the link in the chat as well.
So yeah, so the QR code is back in the chat. There we go.
Okay.
Have a go at that.
Brilliant. So the options are not at all confident, not very confident but willing to give it a try, raring to go and up for it, or quite confident and ready to learn, not necessarily in that order. So just let us know which of those options mostly applies to you. And as you can see from that, most people, which is great, are feeling quite confident and ready to learn, which is a nice kind of humble middle ground, and a really good one. And no one is saying they're not at all confident, which is fantastic. So just give it one more minute on that one, and then if I can go to the next slide.
And that's great, because it's lovely to come into a space where we've got shared learning together, haven't we? You know, we're all here to learn together. We can all learn from each other, and that's really great. So we're looking forward to hearing from you throughout the morning.
Yeah, and if anyone is struggling to engage with the link, there's another option there. You can just go to menti.com and use that code 5185 335 0. It looks like everyone is managing
Thanks,
that.
Philip. I'm glad to hear that you're raring to go. Yeah, sometimes IT stuff doesn't always work, does it? But that's great. Thank you for putting that in the chat.
Excellent. So one more question for you. So how would you go about setting up a fabulous party for your friends and neighbours? So this is open. You could just put whatever responses you'd like to in this one. WhatsApp group, yeah. That might be the kind of the planning phase. It might be kind of setting up the venue, the room, talking to people during. So it could be before, during, or kind of after, if you like.
Lots of food and nice decorations. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, lots of lists. Yeah,
Yes, that's
like
true.
a good
Yeah.
list. Yeah.
Choose a range of activities that people would enjoy. That's good,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yep. Agree
WhatsApp
theme.
poll.
Yep.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Probably support someone else to do it. Yeah, that's a good call. Know your strengths and weaknesses and get someone else to help you. Don't have to do everything yourself. That's great. Fun decorations. Make sure the space venue is clean and tidy, decorated.
Buy
Keeping it
lottery card,
simple.
win lottery, hire party planner. Yep, that could work, couldn't
Excellent.
it?
Yeah. Into food and drink. Absolutely.
There's a lot here about making people feel comfortable, isn't there? And making sure that the space they're in is inviting, isn't there? Which is good.
Yeah.
And checking
Brilliant.
what people want, what works for people, which is good.
That's great. Do keep them coming in. And if you haven't kind of gathered already, the reason we're asking this is that a lot of the things that you would need to do to set up a fabulous party for your friends and neighbours are pretty much the same things that you would need to do to set up a good, inviting co-production space. So there's something about connecting with people. There's something about kind of creating a really helpful, fun space for people to be in, to invite people into that space, to connect people together when they're in the space, to kick off the kind of party and make sure that everyone is having a good time. All of those things are absolutely what we would be doing when we're trying to craft a good co-production space for people to feel included and to have fun and to feel relaxed and at home and that they're valued in that space and they have what they need to enjoy it. So thank you for that, and I'll return to that a little bit more at the end. But there's some really good theoretical model behind that theory called host leadership, which, if any of you are interested in that, it's a really helpful frame for people who are wanting to grow their skills as facilitators and are interested in co-production. It's a leadership theory that has a lot of traction within social and healthcare, and uses that kind of like party host as an analogy, if you like, for the skills that are needed to lead really well from anywhere. So it also makes a really important distinction between leadership and management. And leadership can come from anywhere from people with lived experience, from people at any point of whatever hierarchy there is within an organization. It's not about your organizational status. It's about what you do to create spaces where people can come together and have a purposeful input into something that will help move things forward in the area that you're working with. Okay, so just a couple more slides, and then we're going to get into some nice practical stuff. Okay, get rid of that. Apologies. So some of you, I'm sure, would have seen this before. There are different models to explain kind of what we mean by co-production that is different from other overlapping terms or similar terms like engagement, consultation, co-design. And this is a really helpful one from Think Local, Act Personal. And it's, as you can see, it's kind of envisioned as a ladder with at the bottom, they're kind of like doing to, and in the middle, things that are doing for people. And the top co-design and co-production is about doing with in an equal and reciprocal partnership. So co-production, which is at the top of that ladder, has an emphasis on action. So it's not just co-design. It's not just asking people what they think. It's about doing stuff with that. It's about moving to action, engaging people from the start, about thinking about what's important, through to thinking about what we could do that would move that agenda along. This is a slide from NHS Horizons, who run something called the School for Change Agents a couple of times a year. There's one coming up in November. Again, we'll give you links to that if anyone's interested at the end of this presentation. It's a fabulous and free training course for people who are interested in social change. And this is the model that they use to describe why co-production doesn't happen as often as we would like it to. So you can see in that circle there are different stages of where people might be engaged. The pre-contemplation, number one, is where you would engage people to ask, what's the problem that we're trying to solve? And that is the baseline for really good quality co-production. Usually what happens is people are engaged somewhere further around the circle. So you might have someone coming out and saying, we think we want to change this, so can you come and talk to us about it? And that's not necessarily bad, but it misses a bit of co-production, which is about, is that the most important thing to be doing? Is that the right frame for the problem that we all agree is something that we really need to prioritize our focus on, or is it something slightly different? So if you're really doing co-production, then that conversation, which is more towards the number one rather than number two, or further along the circle, is where you're really trying to kind of to start engaging people. Anything else is kind of really kind of catching up and trying to make sure that it doesn't go pear-shaped, I guess. Some principles for when you're approaching co-production, some of which we've begun to talk about and show some ways in which we might approach this already. So psychological safety, absolutely key and underpinning everything that you would try and do to engage people. If you don't have that, then nothing else will really work. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. Equality, you want people to kind of leave their hats at the door, or the virtual door, so that there is no kind of deference, there's no hierarchy within the room. When you're trying to engage people, people don't feel like they have to defer to someone's superiority or status when they're engaging. So you've got an equalized space for people to contribute to. Deep listening. So you want to be able to present to people a space in which they feel genuinely heard. And when we're running kind of co-production activities, often that's one of the key themes that comes up, is people feeling in the past that that's never happened, that they've been palmed off, or someone said that they've listened to, but then nothing has happened as a result. So it doesn't feel like they've really been listened to, or it feels like a tick box exercise, or those kind of things. So yeah, giving people the time and the focus and the attention to really do some deep listening and to really hear and acknowledge what people are saying, absolutely vital. And then for people hosting the spaces, setting the tone where people feel both comfortable and hopeful that things are going to be changing as a result of your engagement, that the voices will be heard, things will that will be taken on board. Not necessarily that you're going to do everything that people say, but that people's views will contribute to what happens in a way that is balanced against what's possible and practical. And that last bit, because co-production is about the production bit, that it has to be action focused and not just about co-design. So just a few more bits about psychological safety because it's so important. This is from one of the leading authors on psychological safety, who's spent most of her career writing and researching around how vital this is within organizational dynamics. So Amy Edmondson, professor at Harvard, says psychological safety is a belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. And why is that important? Well, it's important because if you don't have that, things will start to go awry. So no one wants to look ignorant, and sometimes that means people feel afraid to ask questions. No one wants to look incompetent, so people don't admit weaknesses or mistakes. No one wants to feel intrusive, so they might feel that they don't want to come forward with ideas. And no one wants to be negative, so they don't like to critique the status quo. And that sort of stuff is what you really want to avoid, and create a kind of creating a safe, psychological safe space for that to not be the underpinnings is really important. This is from one of the biggest pieces of research conducted by Google over, I think, about 5 years into what makes a successful team. Obviously, Google have the resources to do this kind of level of research. So hundreds of teams that they did their research with to find what were the most successful, most important, most critical factors for building a successful team. And they identified 5 that you can read for yourself there. But the one that was underpinned all of them was psychological safety. And you might be able to read that quote there. Psychological safety was by far the most important of the 5 key dynamics we find. It's the underpinning of the other 4. So this is one of the tools that we use to help with putting those practices into action. It's sometimes called a meeting map. Or it's a little bit more than an agenda, because you can see there's an agenda there in the middle of it. But we've also got at the top, as we've been saying, a purpose statement. So there are 2 there. There's the social care future purpose statement on the right that you've heard us say before, and another one which is relevant for the particular workshop that we were doing on the left. Then we've got the agenda, and then the ways of working that we went through a version of today, including a piece there that you'll notice on psychological safety, which would typically say not exactly what we just told you, but some version of that that's relevant and appropriate for the audience. So, okay, we're going to have a go with some theming practice now, and I'm already making a mistake because we are a little bit behind, so we might not have quite as long as we would have ideally liked for that. But this is a practice that we use within this Working Together for Change process. This is a photo of Working Together for Change process in Southend, where they used it to look at developing an anti-poverty strategy. So what they're doing there is looking at the things that people told them when they asked them in advance and collected information in were not working about their lives at the moment. And they're putting them into an order, asking the group that's behind the camera what fits with what, and trying to give it kind of names. So that's what we're going to do now. So bear with me a second, and I will get the Miro board up, for which there should be.
So I'll put a link again in the chat for the Miro board. So do bear with us on this. I think it's our first time using Miro board, isn't it? In a live workshop. We've been used to using Jamboard, so this is a bit of a new one for us too. If you can access the link, that's great. You can go in. If you're not familiar to Miro, it's basically, it presents it as a whiteboard. You can have a look around at. You can move around in the space, and then we will be using that board to present from. So you can interact with it as well if you want to. Don't worry if you can't access it, because we will be sharing the screen as Simon is doing, and you can still interact with us and chat. And that's brilliant. We can see a lot of visiting people coming in. It gives you all different names. We've got visiting trailblazers and designers and inventors. Very interesting. I think Jamboard gave you different animals, didn't it? It seems like Miro gives you a title. We have a visiting painter. I'm not quite sure how it picks what you are going to be, but anyway. So there's a lot of people in there whizzing around, which is great.
Fantastic.
So,
So what you can see here, and you can start to kind of move things around and play with it, but I'd ask you for now, if you can just refrain from that for a moment. Is real data from a process that was run in Hertfordshire, asking, I think mostly, if not exclusively, carers about what was working well in their lives at the moment. And when we're running Working Together for Change processes, this is typically what we do. But we'll ask people deliberately open questions about what's going well for you right now, but also what's not going well for you at the moment. And finally, what aspirations do you have for the future? What's most important for you in the future? And those kind of open questions can give you really rich data to help you understand what the gap might be between how things are working at the moment, what the kind of local offer is, if you like, for people, and what would really make a difference to improving their lives. So typically we will use the boards that you saw in the picture, although you can do it online. You can use these whiteboards as well, and it works technically just as well, although obviously it's not as engaging because you haven't got people in the room. And we will have all the data that people have told us on transcribed onto here, post-it notes or little scraps of paper, and stuck onto boards. And then the job then is to ask people within the group, which is typically a mix of people, including people with lived experience, people from voluntary sector organisations, and frontline staff and managers from within a local authority, kind of what fits with what. So we would pick one of the statements and say, this person said what was working well was being introduced to Turning Point, which gave me a single point of contact. Because that's the first thing, we can just put it over here. We would work in pairs to do this. We're going to ask you to have a go if you want to, if anyone's interested in volunteering. But Ali and I will just do the first three or four, and then we'll ask for volunteers.
okay, so I would then pick another one. So we'll be reading them out in a workshop. So having donated to us all an electric wheelchair, which enables my daughter to leave the home and the adaptations made to our home. And what we would then ask the group is, does this fit with the previous comment that we've just read out, or do you think it stands alone as a separate one? Feel free to, this is an interactive exercise. It would be an interactive exercise if we ran it in a workshop. Feel free just to shout out or pop in the chat your response to that. So do you think this comment goes with the previous comment, or do you think it's another one?
Yeah, so you might want to put your hand up if you want to say something, and then we can come to you, or if you want to put something in the chat. Either way is absolutely fine.
Separate. So Kate's saying separate. So we'll separate, and Jessica. So we usually go with the majority rule on this one. So we will check around and make sure it's not just one voice that's always replying to it. So we'll say, how does everybody else feel about that? Do you generally think this is a separate one? So, but we're getting the separate vibe for that one. Brilliant.
Okay, so I'm going to pick one more. Provision of equipment, for example, mini hoist. So I might ask you if you want to take your microphones off mute for the moment, just so we can have a bit more of an interaction for this one. It is difficult when you're doing this online. Most of the time we do, when we're running this particular process, we do it live, but you can do it, and it does work, and it does work well, certainly well enough when you're doing it online, but it's reliant on people kind of being talkative and engaging. So please do shout out what you think. So does it fit with either of these two other statements, or is it something different?
Feels like it fits with the one on the right.
Yeah.
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 So we've got a couple of, could be both or linked. So
what do other people think? Does that feel right to others?
Yeah, the one to the right.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll put that together over here. And the nice thing with when you're doing it online is you can kind of shrink and overlap them, so you've got as much space as you need.
Okay, so Admiral Nurse now visiting me in order to give me much needed support. So again, does it fit with the two groups we've got at the moment, or do you think it's a separate group?
I think it's a separate group.
A separate group, yeah. And what does everybody else think? Thanks, Kirsty.
Family and friends. WtfC.
Yep. Are people generally happy if that goes into a separate group?
I think it could be the same.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because the person's
It's a tricky one, yeah.
been introduced to Admiral, similar to that person's been introduced to Turning Point.
Okay.
It's difficult.
So should we put it near to that one for the moment? Sometimes when we've got a few more, we can get a bit more of an idea as to whether it fits into the same theme. So it's that the starting point of this can be a bit tricky, can't it? Because you're kind of just trying to build up the idea of what sort of information is coming out. But the whole point of this is that we are truly and deeply listening, as Simon was saying earlier, to what people have said. People can often get survey fatigue, kind of feeling that things they say don't really get listened to. This exercise is great for really helping people to feel that their words are important. Everything is really important that they're saying, and it's not just being filed away and not really heard.
Okay, so let's pick this one next. So mother-in-law carers keeping medication in a lockbox so that she cannot overdose on codeine. Does that fit with anything else that's there, or do you feel it's different?
It seems separate to me.
Yeah, I think separate as well.
Yeah.
It's something to do with professionals. I think it's something to do with professionals that helping family members to keep safe.
Yeah. So having good professional support to keep me safe, does that? So you could say, what we wouldn't do when we're facilitating this is to say, but I think this looks like actually it fits here. But what you could say as an alternative is to pose that as a question, to say, is that similar enough that it feels like it fits here, or do you think that it's different?
Okay, so I've got another one here saying, on behalf of my 94-year-old mother, she has carers going in 4 times a day. Generally, they keep to time frames, so I do not need to worry. Again, do you think that fits in with the themes that we've got emerging in the different spaces, or is that a separate one?
It's definitely about support. Some of the others, the one on the far left looks to be about support. So I don't know whether it should go there. I don't know.
And about carers as well, coming in and looking after the person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving over towards any particular groups you think it goes in, or just we're going to put it near to that area for the time being?
It's too early to say.
Too early to say. Somebody's so Emma's putting, I agree, it fits with the nurse visiting.
Yeah, I think it goes over with the Admiral Nurse.
Okay, so I'll pop it over for now.
So if we were to give those two a label, what might that say to kind of to summarize those ones? And when we're asking for a label, what we would encourage people to do is to use plain language and keep it in the first person. So an example that we often use is, which a thing that comes up very often is people saying things like, I don't see people very often, I only have carers in my life, I've lost contact with my friends and family, I can't get out and about much, and I miss company. And so an unhelpful frame for that, or theme for that, would be people are socially isolated. And the reason that's unhelpful is it's using professional language that people wouldn't use. And it's talking about people rather than coming from the voice of people. So we want to keep it in the voice of people, and for it to be ideally in the first person. So we typically use I or we statements, which you might recognize are an important way in which they're making it real framework. That a thing like personal, for those of you who are familiar with that, frames its approach. So using I and we statements in the first person. So we would typically say I am lonely would be a useful point for that. So for this one, using those principles, what might you say that would work for the Admiral nurse and having the 94-year-old mother having carers going in that work for her? Someone to shout out a...
We value external support.
So keep it in the present tense, and I think I would suggest this is about kind of support workers who are providing personal care, supporting people in their own homes, isn't it? I think from what this is suggesting. So I would invite you to see if you can get something slightly closer to that. Sometimes we say, you can pick words that are already in there. So you might say much needed support or keeping to time. So I don't need to worry. So those kind of things could form part of the label that helps. So it could be something like, I get the support, good support that works for me, so I don't need to worry, would be typically a way of doing that, because it picks up on some of the language that's already in there, if that makes sense. Kirsty, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, why don't we put your continuum of support? Your continuum with support.
Yeah. Hold on a minute. Okay. Good. Continuity of support. So I don't need to worry. Okay, so something like that would pick up the language that's in there and represent kind of what's in there. You might have one over here around equipment that might say something like, I have equipment that helps me be independent, something like that.
And doing this exercise with people really emphasizes that you're really deeply listening to people and you're really picking out the themes that are important for them. Sometimes surveys can be done, and this kind of theming happens behind closed doors in the office space and is then presented to people as to the themes. So this exercise is very much about involving people right from the word go, to be involved in that journey to finding out what the themes are and using the language that is meaningful to people and makes sense to people.
So let's open it up. Is there anyone who'd like to have a go? Don't be shy. And that means you can, if you can pick one up and move it yourself, that's great. If you can't do that, we can do that for you, and you can just do the bit. Anyone want to volunteer? Just raise your hand if you do. Ideally, we want a couple to do that. That doesn't mean a married couple, that means two people. God, someone be brave.
I'm happy to go if no one else wants to do it.
Brilliant. That'd be great, Kirsty. And someone asked to work with Kirsty. And the reason we do it in pairs is it helps you get a rhythm. When you're doing it in the real world, then one person can be sticking something on a board and the next person can be reading something out. So it helps you also kind of keep up the pace and have someone to kind of share that responsibility with. Makes it feel a little bit more kind of comfortable. So rhythm and pace and sharing that load.
Kate, if you could read it from the shared screen, that would be great. You don't have to be able to move it around, so we can move it for you if you'd like to be involved in that.
That's a great assumption, Ali, that I can see it. I can see about two of
really
them.
Good. Thank you, Kate.
I can see I am learning how to cook. That's about the only one I can see because it's big and supportive
Okay,
payments,
so
which is
we'll
already
move
there.
that one for you
There we
then,
go.
Kate. Brilliant.
Okay.
So if you want to have a go at just facilitating that one, Kate, and just ask people like we have, where do you think it might go?
Okay.
And we can read it for you.
Okay, so I'm learning how to cook. Does it link to anything we already have, do you think? Or do we think it's a new one?
I think it's a new one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.
Kirsty, do you want to do one? Shall I pick one out for you?
I can't move it. Can someone move it?
Yeah. I've got this one for you,
Please.
Kirsty.
Oh.
Previously of equipment for example, mini horse.
And so what are you asking, Kirsty?
Where do you think it should go?
Yeah.
Do we think we need a new one, or does it go with a spin what we have already have?
Yeah, I think you're right, Leanne. We have
Yeah,
already
we
got
already
that
We've
one.
had that one, isn't it? Yeah, I think it's
Okay, sorry.
yeah. So either
Excellent.
we've duplicated that, or two people had that one, which could have been.
It's true.
So that was an easy one, wasn't it? Because we've already done that one.
Okay, I'm going to pull another one out then. So is it Kate? Do you want to read this one?
Able to make contact via email and feel these messages are acted on in terms of risk, etc. So do we think that links to any of our existing themes?
I think it still sounds like the support side of things.
Okay, so should we move it over to the left?
Left, yeah.
Yeah, got Leanne saying support as well.
The screen suddenly got brighter. I don't know what means how that's happening.
Yeah.
So just one of those kind of random things. Apologies for that.
That's okay.
I mean, sorry, is it about support, that one, or is it about making contact?
It could go with the one about a single point of contact if it was about communication.
Oh, the one at the top. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, got you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Andrew's put having a single point of contact.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Yep. And the aim when we're doing this is to make sure that we're including everybody. And we'd often work, and people would be on tables, but we'd be doing this as a whole group. But we would be encouraging facilitators on each table to make sure that everybody is getting involved in this. And it's not just the ones that feel okay about shouting out and shouting out the responses, that we are being as inclusive as possible and making sure we're getting a collective viewpoint on this.
Making a career assessment referral to adult care services online, or it's for date forward.
Yeah.
Where do you think it should go? Or a new one?
I think it might be a new one.
Yeah, so Deanne thinks it might be a new one.
Oh, I was thinking it kind of was about this making contact, the kind of those two, like contact points and stuff, but maybe not.
And now the tricky thing, Kate, when you're being a facilitator hat on, is how much to then, and this is tricky because we're doing it in an exercise.
I'm sorry.
No, exactly. It's perfectly understandable because you're doing both roles at the moment. So, but just to be aware, as a facilitator, we would be then saying, opening up to the group to make sure that it's their point of view. And that's tricky, isn't it? Because we might have a very strong point of view about it, but we're making sure we're facilitating the group.
Okay.
It's an exercise that can take a bit of...
Sorry, in that case, Ali, do we want it separate then, group, or do we want to put it with one of the others that we've already got. Yeah, good point, Ali. Sorry.
And that's perfect. You've done it perfectly well. So thank you, Kate. And thank you for being brave enough to give this a go. So it's really kind of you. Sophie's put it's like the email contact one.
Yeah, I think she's right. It's the sort of the initial contact at the beginning, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Why were you thinking that it was a new one? Because it sounds like if you're saying it's a new one, that you do think it's different from the ones we've already got. So
we think this is a new one, did you say?
Yeah, somebody said that they thought it was a new one, and we've got some people saying a new one, some people saying over to the left. So it's whether we put it as a new one, but move it over to the left. So we're kind of.
Yeah, it's related.
Yeah.
Like a cousin. Okay, so thank you for that. I'm just gonna just say a couple of things about kind of the importance of doing the working well stuff first. So as I said, when we're running these processes, working together for change processes, we're asking people not only what's working well, but also what's not working. The not working stuff is the really nitty-gritty important stuff to be grappling with, and we focus most of our attention on that. We spend most of the time in the process looking at what we could do that would really improve things. But starting with working well gives you a baseline where you're understanding that not everything is terrible for everyone all of the time. Some things are working well for some people some of the time, and often what you'll find is that they're the same things that aren't working for other people. So when you get to the not working stuff, you can find the same themes coming up, and sometimes more people saying, yeah, but it's not working for me. And that's interesting. It just gives you a comparison, and it might mean that then you can look at why it worked for that particular group of people and not for others. So it gives you some sense that you can build on the things that are working, and you don't have to start from scratch, which is a really important thing to be able to do. And it loosens people up to get into that more difficult space. So that's why we do that. But just to give you a look at something different. Let me see if I can find it. So let's just spend a few minutes playing with this one. So this is not data collected from a process, but these are things over the many years that Annie and I have been working together for change, particularly, but not only, co-production processes of what can get in the way of it going really well. So same principle applies. You can theme these in exactly the same way. So the data for how you would use this process that you've just played with can be almost anything, but what at its best you want to ask open rather than closed questions. So what could go wrong? It gives you access to a multitude of different ways, and here are some of them. So we'll just do a couple of minutes on this. Some people are saying that they don't think this they think this is consultation and not co-production. Ali, do you want to do another one?
Yep. So one person in the meeting is getting very upset and visibly distressed. So do you think that goes with the one that Simon just read out, or do you think that's a separate theme? That's okay, Philip, if you have to step off, that's all right. Hope you're okay. So what do you think? Does this one go with the previous one? It's a separate one, Debbie's saying. So I'll put that separate for now. Okay, Simon?
Yep, okay, let's miss this one. So someone brings in a list of issues they want raised during the day, but these haven't been reflected in the data collection. So you'll see from the process that we've just been playing with, that information was collected in advance. So what happens when someone comes in with a bunch of issues that are completely different from the data that you've spent a lot of time carefully kind of working out who to collect from and bringing into the space? That again, something else that can happen. So does that fit with anything else that's there, or is that separate?
People getting
Separate.
upset, maybe.
Separate, I think. A couple
Yeah,
of people
separate.
saying. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it feels like it fits in with the person getting very upset.
Yeah. So we'll put it close to this one.
Yeah, it's somebody feeling
There's
quite passionate about something, isn't it?
Yeah, people kind of not engaging with the process, isn't it?
Mm.
There's a link
I
there.
think it might be to do with emotional health, maybe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've got another one saying people are asking, how do we know this just isn't just a ruse for cuts? So obviously people coming in here with a lack of trust in the process, which often does happen. And we often do have to do a lot of building that trust up at the beginning. We call it an arc of trust. We see that in a majority of the workshops that we do. People just coming in, feeling a bit cynical, probably haven't been heard much in the past, and just wanting to know that this is different. This is going to be a different space for them. So where do you think that one might go?
Perhaps
That's
that's
similar
going
to
over
people.
to the consultation and not co-production bit. It's kind
Yeah.
of like this is just
Like a tick box
a
thing.
tick box, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Okay. Brilliant.
I'll just do one more. One person is speaking passionately for a long time and does not want to be interrupted. Does that fit with anything else, or is that
I think
separate?
that's similar to the list of issues, maybe.
Okay.
In a sense that someone's bringing in their own agenda, whatever that might be. Yep.
But yeah, it might not reflect the wider group, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. It's a personal rather than a collective viewpoint. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we'll pause it there, and I just invite you to notice what that feels like, and what that feels like if we hadn't done the other one first, if we hadn't done the working well first. If you just dive straight into that, even though obviously we're looking at slightly dummy data or data that isn't collected directly from individuals, how different that might feel from looking at the stuff that you can build on. That means that there are some good foundations that help. And just to reassure you really that sometimes when you're getting in the middle of this stuff, there's a lot of post-it notes there. There's a lot of things that people have said that are going wrong. That's generally reflected when we get to not working data that is real. We often have not quite twice as much, but say 1.5 times as much data. It can feel really quite overwhelming, can feel quite painful, quite difficult to work through. But the beauty of running a process like this and asking people for their input is that you do not need, as a facilitator, to have any of the answers at all. Your job is to create a space where people can think through a process that allows them to work out what the answers are for themselves, and to just guide people through that in a way that they can come to this, what we sometimes call a Goldilocks zone, where you're working out what's the thing that we can do that will make the biggest difference that is within our collective gift to be able to do. And that means that it is practical and possible. It's within our resources to be able to do it in terms of time, in terms of money, and in terms of people. And you can guide people through that process without having to have any expert knowledge of the area that you're looking at, and without having to have any sense of having to come with answers, because that's not co-production. Co-production is not trying to fix everything for people. It's about sitting alongside and working through the problems constructively, optimistically, with a curated, if you like, space to be able to come to some shared thoughts about what we can do, what are the priorities, what would make the biggest difference. So we will return to another exercise which is really helpful and leads on from that a little bit later in our session. But for now, we're just going to take a little bit of a detour into language. So bear with me, and I'm going to.
While Simon's setting that up, I just want to reflect on the fact the questions we were asking as well, just to remember they were very open-ended questions, and they're typically questions that we do use in the workshop. So what's working well in your life? What's not working well? So we're encouraging people to be real about where they're at, and not being too concise in that, encouraging people to flush out the gaps and find out what's really important to them.
Okay, so we wanted to talk about language for a minute, which is, as I said earlier, can be a little bit thorny, a little bit delicate, a little bit difficult to traverse when you're engaging with people. And our experience is, for the most part, engaging with people within that kind of broad sense, broad area of kind of social care and healthcare. This is an area of focus that Bryony Shannon, if any of you have come across her, is a particularly useful person to acquaint yourself with. Has a wealth of resources, is a prominent blogger and an ally of Social Care Futures. So she blogs regularly on, I think the phrase is language that makes me go, within social care. So this, what you can see here is some work that she did at a Social Care Future event about a month ago, to ask people in the audience which terms make them go, not sure about that. And from both Ali and I were in this workshop. You can see from the screenshots there, some of the terms that came up, particularly service user stood out, and vulnerable, which people felt didn't sit with them very easily, felt a little bit othering, if you like. And there's a link there if you want to read a little bit more about the thinking behind that, why that language can be tricky. And it's not to say that everyone has to use the right language all the time, but sometimes just acknowledging that language isn't always a good fit and can bring up emotions for people that are uncomfortable. And then there's a gap between how we want to talk about things and what they actually feel like is enough to be able to reassure people that we're listening, even if we're struggling to try and find the right language, the right words, and we don't know what they are. To just acknowledge that gap is there is a really helpful thing to do in itself. But what Bryony talks about is that some of the language which is perhaps more helpful are the everyday words that we use, which are reflected in, you remember, the Social Care Future vision, that are about we, they're inclusive words, they use people, love, family, relationships, hope, home, joy. Those things are not often the words that we use, but they are the words which help describe what makes a good life for all of us. And perhaps her challenge is that we can find ways, if we're thoughtful, to use those kind of words more often, and the kind of professional language that we were describing earlier and reflected here, service user, vulnerable, social isolation, to use those words a little bit less. So here's an example again from one of the processes that we've run of an authority. This is Leicester City, who were really grappling with that. So they ran a Working Together for Change process that you can see photos of there. That's their assistant director standing at the front, and you can see a very mixed audience of people from across the city. Some people who draw on services, care and support, some people from voluntary sector organisations, some commissioning staff, some frontline staff, some senior managers, some people from their co-production group, all together in a room, about 40 people. And their focus area in old money had been called prevention or early intervention, but they didn't want to use that language because it's triggering for some people who might think, what are you trying to keep me from that I might be entitled to? What are you trying to prevent? Are you just trying to save money? Why are you kind of keeping me out of the door? So they've used a frame of reference, which you can see there, about building better lives and working together to understand what it would take to help people build better lives who might want to draw on care and support, and build that shared understanding to work out what they can do. So we thought we would just open up a little bit of a discussion to see to hear your experience about things that you might have struggled with in relation to language, or things that you're not sure about how to tackle. So let's get some thoughts from people there. Anyone want to share their experience or thinking on that?
Well, just before I went on leave a week before last, I took part in a capacity assessment for my dad, and as soon as we went into the room, the psychologist or whoever he was, some professional guy, started talking about my dad as a patient, and just said, "Oh, the patient," and I was like, "This is Brian, my dad." He likes to be known as Brian rather than Mr. Shepherd, and just trying to kind of break that patient thing, because just because you're being assessed, immediately putting him in position of being a patient, I thought it was quite dehumanizing and patronizing, and Dad looked really pissed off, so I thought it was important to challenge it. So I suppose that's kind of one example of language that
That's a really good example, and that happens a lot, doesn't it? And particularly when you say the patient, that's even worse, isn't it? It's completely dehumanizing and puts somebody in other situations. It's not about being human together, is it? Which is what we're trying to get to. Thank you, Kate. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
In Mind, we've been talking to people for some time, and we knew the word service user was not appreciated by anybody. In fact, some of those people said it made them feel as if they were a drug addict, or something like that. That was the connotation that it held for people. So we switched to people who use our services, but it's such a mouthful, and we've now condensed that to people we help. And actually, I think that feels right, and it seems from all the consultation we've had that feels comfortable for people, but it's still, I think, a very widely used word, isn't it? But people we help, it's simple, isn't it? Just simple, I think, is what we need to be aiming for with the language.
That's a really big one, that service user one, because some areas, my local area, just uses it as a gold standard to use service users. So that's held up there as the pinnacle, and it's quite tricky, challenging that at times to say, actually, how do people feel about that when they're being called a service user? So you're completely right, and it's having those conversations, isn't it? It's a tricky one, because actually what do you put in place instead? But to have that conversation and to find something that people feel comfortable with and happy using, that conversation is really important, isn't it? I described myself at the beginning as a parent carer. Not everybody likes that terminology. I'm okay with using it. It kind of fits for me. I haven't been in a paid role, hadn't been for many years, so it was a terminology that worked for me. But I'm aware that some people don't like it. So it's acknowledging that when we use titles, when we use ways of describing ourselves, it might not fit for other people. It might be quite triggering for somebody else, which it can be actually. For some parents, they don't want to be described as a carer as well. They want to say, I'm a parent, and that's who I am.
Anyone else got any thoughts, reflections on that? One in the chat. Yes, I was working with a group of people who've been or addicted to heroin. They felt service user very much took them back to being called a user as a drug user. Thank you. Right. Angela.
I was just going to say, in my role and in previous roles, we've always just asked the person, what do you prefer? These are, you're going to hear us saying the client, the customer, the patient, depending on the circumstances. What do you prefer? We've used in the past a member when I worked for another organisation, our members, not our clients, not our service users, our members. And I think it's where you can't always ask the person, but where possible is to ask them and maybe offer some options of their preferred. I just like calling people by their name, but you know, sometimes when you're writing reports or whatever, that's my view.
No, that's really helpful. And actually be using someone's name. It sounds silly. And again, there's been a bit of a campaign for, and this happens to me a lot, just calling you mum, a health professional saying mum, and you're just labelled as the mum. And actually it can feel a bit lazy at times, because actually I have a name. I am a person in my own right, and calling me by my name shows that someone's bothered to know who I am, rather than just saying, oh, mum. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, the message from Jeff in the chat saying sounds as though a new name needs to be co-produced, which I think is, Angela, is pretty much what you're saying, is that you can do that. You can do that on an individual basis. You can just ask people, you know, what's the best way, and using people's names and using people rather than user is always a really good starting point, even if it's not if it doesn't feel ideal. Another one for me, which I've really struggled with, is I'm a carer, have someone in my family who struggles with addiction, and the phrase that I was told that applied to me was affected other. So not carer, but affected other. And I was quite shocked and taken aback when I heard that language. And what was more difficult than the language itself was that sense of people being told that's what I was, that was my label, and I fitted into that box. And that was quite triggering for me. So I immediately got into an argument to kind of say, no, that doesn't feel comfortable. I don't like that term. And what you want to avoid is kind of like being in that position where you've stumbled upon something which is triggering, because it's language that is everywhere and that is often used. It might be built into your recording systems. So it might be just stuff that you have to fill in a form, and then it spills out into the conversations that you have with people. So trying to find ways to avoid that and navigate that territory is really important. Okay, I've got one more thing to do, just very quickly to run through for you before we go to a break. And I'm pleased to say I think we've more or less kind of made up time, which is good to hear. So these are just, again, from our experience over the last few years, some ideas, some key strategies, if you like, as we frame them, for dealing with group dynamics when they might get a bit thorny. So perhaps, you know, the service user word has been bandied around and people are being triggered, or they might have had a bad day, or they might have just had some previously bad experiences when they're coming to you. And if you're trying to host a co-production space and people are kicking off in one way, shape or form, what do you do? How do you deal with that? So here are some ideas as to things that we've tried that we think work particularly well and can be particularly helpful, that you can pick up and use for yourself. It's not an exhaustive list, so if you've got other ideas, please do put them in the chat, and we'll pick them up and gratuitously claim them as our own and integrate them into this and share it back with you as well, of course. So the first one is to make sure that you don't do it alone. Don't take individual responsibility for when things get thorny, for when people are upset. It's not about you. It's almost never about you. You're just the person who's there at the time, and people sometimes need to vent, sometimes need to get off their chest things that have been really bugging them. And if that's not possible, then sometimes that could be worse, people just hiding things and not being honest or not engaging. So it's not always a negative thing, but not to take it personally and not to do it alone. To work as a team is really important, at least if you've got one other person that you're going in prepared to in a space. One other thing that's particularly helpful that we do a lot of, you might have seen that in that meeting map board that we showed you earlier, is contracting at the beginning. So going through those ways of working, as we did with you this morning, to say around pacing, we might need to speed it up a little bit, and that might mean that we need to move on from certain conversations. Saying that at the beginning can make it really helpful when you get to those moments within the course of a meeting or a workshop, to be able to then go back to it when everyone has agreed to it in the first place. So contracting at the beginning around pacing and the importance of hearing everyone's voice and what you might do if things go a little bit off if you get stuck. So those things you can deal with all of those things in the contracting at the beginning. And if you're saying kind of we want to hear from everyone, that also implies that you want to hear from the quiet people as well as the people who share their voices more easily. Listening with respect. So sometimes when you feel on the back foot, when it feels triggering for you, perhaps, or when it feels personal, even though you're trying to remind yourself that it's not, that can feel emotionally difficult, and you might be tempted or even unconsciously start to be defensive, and that can make things worse. So leaning in rather than leaning back, and trying to make people understand that you are listening with respect. That's your role, that you might have to balance that against making sure that you can listen to everyone, but your focus is not shying away from what people are saying. You want to listen, but within a framework that is fair and respectful. If you have a clear purpose statement at the front, and again, that was something you can remember from the board, to anchor the conversation. So if things go off piece, you can remind people. And again, you've got a prop so that it isn't just about your eye contact against them. It's something you can refer to that is a neutral space to be able to say, just remember, I'm going to have to just, if it's okay, to just pause there to make sure that we're still being true to our core purpose. And if not, maybe there's another way that we could deal with that. Sometimes there are things within what people are saying, pretty much always, I would say, that are useful. So there's a challenge to kind of just trying to pick out what that might be. So there might be an opportunity to reframe the bits that are really important. And often one that comes up for us is people saying, I'm really not sure I can trust this process. It feels like I've done this before, I've been here before, I've heard all of this before. And a way of reframing that whilst also listening to people and respecting them is to say something like, that's really helpful. That drive to be collectively accountable is something that I want us to hold on to. I want us all to hold on to because that's where we want to go. So it's reframing it rather than us as them, bringing it back to a we and connecting it to the core purpose. And so it's harnessing something that is painful, but using it in a way that helps you stay focused and directed. It's important sometimes to kind of just make an effort to invite the quiet people to share. And that means if you're facilitating a space, that you need to look out for who those people are and invite them to have a conversation. Sometimes if you're in a physical room, you can move closer to them to make it that little bit more intimate, or to notice opportunities where you can to draw people into the conversation. If you've got other people with you as well, then you can share that task, which is always helpful. And it's okay to challenge when necessary, to bring people back on track, reminding them for the purpose statement or reminding them of the particular task that you're focused on at any one time, and not to feel shy about doing that. You're doing that for a reason, because you want people's time to be used the most constructively that they can. You want everyone to get to the end and feel that their time has been well spent. And in order to do that, you need to be able to get through what you've got on the agenda. Another thing that we use is a reflection practice. So we'll have moments during the course of workshops where we say, let's just take a moment to think about what we learned so far. And is there anything that's missing? Are there any gaps? Is there anything that's burning for people? Is there anything, if we're using kind of data, that hasn't come out in the data that people feel is important? And you might not be able to deal with that then, but it gives you a space to just make sure that people aren't holding on to things that are making it difficult for them to engage with the space. And then what you can use is something called what we call a parking space. to capture those issues that you can't deal with immediately, and you can take somewhere else, or you can just log it and deal within the break. So we have, as you can see at the bottom there, literally a parking space board, a flip chart. We invite people at the beginning when we're going through the meeting map to say, if there's anything that doesn't feel like it quite fits, here we've got a space to be able to capture it, and we'll do what we can to find someone in the room who can work with whoever's raising it to move that forward in a way that is constructive and helpful. So purpose statement, meeting map, and parking space, 3 tools that you can use that will really help you to deal with those difficult dynamics. So we're just a couple of minutes over, which is not bad, all things considered. So we're going to go to a short break. I think we've given ourselves 15 minutes. So if we come back at 11:45, is that okay for people? Give you time to just stretch your legs, step away from the screen, get a cup of tea, any refreshments that you need, and we'll see you back here at 11:45.
And if you've got any good tips that we can add in and we can share with everybody, please do put them in the chat. That would be great. We'd love to learn from everybody here as well.
Oh, meeting map, parking space. The third one was a purpose statement. Clear purpose statement.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. See you in a little while.